Housework is your job. Stop slacking off. Here we go again. My husband, Jack, never takes care of his own needs and expects me to do everything. When I point it out, he always says, "I'm too busy with work." But no, that's not an excuse. Not at this level. And to top it off, he calls me a nagging devil of a wife. I've had enough. This is my breaking point. I'll show him that a mom isn't weak. My name is Naomi. When I decided to switch to yogurt for breakfast to lose weight, it turned out so delicious that I kept adding toppings. And ironically, I gained weight instead. A clumsy 40-year-old. That's me. Even my daughter, Lily, chided me, saying, "Mom, you have to count your carbs." She started talking like some kind of beauty expert, apparently, for my next attempt at weight loss. Lily, who's on the track team, plans to take me jogging. I guess I'll try to lose weight healthily by being more active. Turns out, strict dietary changes aren't for me. I love food too much, but I know I can tackle exercise-based weight loss. After all, I've overcome far more difficult challenges in the past. It was about 15 years ago. I had just found out I was pregnant with Lily. I didn't know anything since it was my first pregnancy. And the days I spent asking Mom and my friends who had children for advice was nostalgic. I was nervous, but imagining the day I would finally meet my baby should have been a time filled with joy and anticipation. But instead, I found myself dealing with a major issue. "Naomi, grab me beer," Jack said casually. If I happened to be standing near the fridge, maybe that wouldn't have been so unreasonable. But Jack would hand me his empty bottle and ask for another, even when I was right next to him. Oh, here we go again. I let out a deep sigh. Jack never fetches his own coffee or beer. Is he one of those old-school henpecked husbands? Not exactly. He used to handle things himself. But back when he was working long hours and always tired, I felt bad for him. As a stay-at-home mom, I wasn't exhausted, so I started bringing him things out of kindness. And somehow that kindness turned into an expectation over time. I hadn't really minded doing these things before, but once I became pregnant, Jack's requests started to feel like a burden. Getting coffee or beer from the kitchen was one thing, but when he asked me to fetch his jacket from the second floor or grab something he left in the car, I found myself running all over the place. Lately, my morning sickness had gotten worse, and while these requests might seem trivial to Jack, each one felt increasingly difficult for me. I know he doesn't mean any harm, but I couldn't help feeling annoyed by his lack of consideration. Still, I didn't have the courage to say to Jack, who was tired, "Do it yourself," so I silently put up with it. Somewhere deep down, I think I expected him to notice on his own since I was pregnant. But when I brought it up to a friend, she said, "Men won't get it unless you say it out loud. They're not like us women, who can pick up on things intuitively." Her words made me realize I'd been expecting too much. So I decided to talk to Jack honestly. "I'm finding it harder to move around now that I'm pregnant. Please try to handle your own things as much as possible." "What? You've always done it before." "Wait." He's arguing with me. "I'm not full of energy every day, you know. I need to take care of my body, so I'd like to avoid unnecessary trips up and down the stairs, for example." "Come on, I work every day, and am not full of energy either." "That's not what I mean. Naomi, even if you're not feeling great, you're a housewife. You can relax at home. I have to go to work, no matter how tough it is." "I thought you understood that." "Listen, I've always done what I could to support you, even without saying anything. But now, my body is changing daily, and I need your help to protect our baby." "Don't exaggerate." grabbing a beer or fetching my stuff from the car isn't putting the baby in danger. If I trip and fall, it is. Well, then just don't trip. That's a separate issue from me asking you for help. Excuse me. What is he even saying? Was he always like this? If I have an accident because of the trivial tasks he asks me to do, it's not his problem. Is that what he's saying? He's not even considering the idea of cutting back on his requests. He doesn't seem to care about me or the baby at all. We'd been married for a year, but this was the first time I felt so disconnected from Jack. It was like trying to connect a smartphone to a speaker over and over again. In the end, nothing changed. Instead, things got worse. Naomi, grab me a beer. Oh wait, will it put the baby in danger? Apparently, he thought he was being funny. What kind of joke is this? I found myself growing more and more irritated by Jack's behavior. It got to the point where I wondered if he was deliberately trying to provoke me for his own amusement. Was this frustration just a result of hormonal changes? Before my pregnancy, would I have laughed off his jokes? Or maybe I was starting to lose patience with him altogether. The complex emotions of pregnancy kept me in constant turmoil. Then one day, Jack's request crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The snow's bad today, and I can't take the car out. Can you walk to the dry cleaners and pick up my suit? What? Let me get this straight. The weather is snowing. The mode of transport is walking. And I am pregnant. Excuse me, but isn't this a trifecta of dangerous keywords? Without the slightest hesitation, Jack pulled out the loyalty card from his wallet, handed it to me with a casual "Here you go." It was snowing so heavily that even the dry cleaner might have been closed for the day. Even if I weren't pregnant, no husband in his right mind would send his wife out in this weather. Don't you think it's dangerous for an unprepared woman to walk outside when the snow is bad enough to stop a car? Jack looked at me with a serious expression. If you're careful not to slip, humans have better awareness than cars. It's safer. What kind of logic is that? Then you should go. My voice rose, and Jack looked genuinely shocked. Honestly, I was more shocked by his surprise. It's true I'd never raised my voice at Jack before. But this time, even I, someone who prided herself on being mild-mannered, had reached my limit. Hey, I worked until yesterday. Okay, I only have today and tomorrow off. And now you're telling me to go pick up my suit? It's your suit, in the first place. You're not being very kind. My coworker told me that pregnant women get mean, and now I see he was right. Don't make it sound like this is my fault. You're the crazy one trying to send your wife out in weather like this. It's just snow, not a hurricane. You're being dramatic, but you're not willing to go out in just snow, are you? Because it's tiring and cold. If I catch a cold, it'll affect my work. If I, as the man of the house, can't work, we won't survive. Now who's being dramatic? We have savings, and a cold won't ruin us. You just don't get it. Fine, I'll pick up the suit next week. I bit my tongue to stop myself from saying, you should be done that from the start. It wouldn't have made a difference anyway. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end of it. One day, it happened again. Can you go buy this? Jack said, handing me a list. The list was filled with household items, far too many for me to carry without a car. Hey, didn't we plan to go shopping together today? You were the one who suggested taking the car since it's a longer trip. Jack tilted his head as if he had no idea what I was talking about. I was planning on it, but I worked late last night. Remember, I just want to relax at home today. Then why don't we postpone the shopping trip? Half the items on this list are yours anyway. There's no way I can carry all this. Maybe we can just order some of it online. You'll be fine. Just power through it. What? Once again, is this just a light-hearted joke? Jack said this with a carefree expression. It seemed that his approach of sending me out alone for shopping hadn't changed. Look, I've told you before, I'm in my final month of pregnancy. I could go into labor at any time. Telling me to power through isn't funny or helpful. Can't you think a little more about my condition? I couldn't help but snap. Recently, I couldn't hide my growing frustration with Jack anymore. Jack, however, looked at me and said, "Calm down. Lately, you've been way too irritable. That kind of lashing out isn't healthy. We live together, so let's try to create a more positive atmosphere, okay?" How could he even say that? He's blaming me now. Did he expect me to carry all these heavy items home by myself? What? In not lashing out. If you really don't want to go shopping, fine, I'll go. Man, working late to earn money. And then not even getting a proper weekend to rest. What am I? Just a walking wallet or something? Jack grabbed his car keys and headed toward the parking lot, grumbling as he went. If I'd been holding something at that moment, I might have thrown it at the back of his head. I was furious. Despite being in my final month of pregnancy, I still cooked, managed the household, and fulfilled his requests. And yet he acted as though he was the only one carrying a heavy load. Enough was enough. Though I was boiling with anger, I decided to seek advice calmly. I turned to Diane, Jack's mom. I wasn't sure if talking to my mother-in-law was the right move, but with the baby's arrival approaching, I wanted to do everything I could to improve my relationship with Jack. Raising a child with him acting this way seemed impossible. We were supposed to be partners, and it felt so lonely to think otherwise. And that's the situation, Diane. I called Diane immediately. Step by step, I explained everything to her. How Jack had told me to walk to the dry cleaners on a snowy day. How had expected me to go shopping alone with a list of items too heavy to carry. And how when I protested, he didn't listen. He didn't even understand what was wrong. Diane was understanding. Jack said that, "Don't let him push you around." She agreed with my perspective and even told me I shouldn't be doing much housework anymore. You never know when the baby will arrive, so Jack needs to get used to taking care of himself, she added. She advised me to avoid standing in the kitchen to cook, and even offered to bring meals herself. When I hesitated, feeling guilty, Diane reassured me, "Don't worry about it. Since my husband passed, I haven't had many opportunities to cook for others. I actually enjoy it," she said with a warm smile. To my surprise, Diane showed up at our house shortly after our call, saying she was worried about me. Her kindness, so unlike Jack's behavior, brought me close to tears. To be honest, Diane and I hadn't been particularly close before. Even after learning about my pregnancy, our contact had been limited to updates like, "They'll let you know once the baby is born." We had maintained a polite but distant relationship. Now I regretted not reaching out to her sooner. However, the warmth didn't last long. When Jack came home from shopping and saw Diane cleaning the house, he blurted out, "Naomi, why are you making Mom clean?" Diane burst into laughter. "Oh no, dear, I wanted to clean. Besides, shouldn't you be doing this? Naomi's due any day now. You can't keep making her do all the housework." Jack froze, stunned by Diane's scolding. Although he looked slightly annoyed, he replied, "Oh, I see. Thanks, Mom. If Naomi's struggling, you need to step up and help her," she added firmly. Jack stayed silent. After finishing a round of cleaning, Diane left, having done so much to help. I was incredibly grateful. It felt like I could finally rest for the first time in a while, but that relief was short-lived. "Why did you make Mom do the housework?" Jack snapped, glaring at me. She offered to help after hearing about my situation. It was her choice. I didn't force her to do anything. Yay, right. You probably exaggerated things again, like you always do. That's not true. You're so hopeless. What did I even do wrong? You dumped your responsibilities onto Mom. Excuse me. Housework is your job. Stop slacking off. Have I ever slacked off before? I've always done everything I needed to, haven't I? I wouldn't know. I'm busy working and rarely home, so for all I know, you could be slacking off when I'm not around. What's it supposed to mean? Don't talk like I don't do anything at all. When I see you pushing your responsibilities onto Mom, what else am I supposed to think? You keep talking about housework as if it's the wife's duty. It's not. Since we're living together, you're just as responsible for it as I am. Oh, so now you're saying I should handle housework too? After earning all the money, going shopping even on my day off, and now you want me to do chores? What a terrible wife you are. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Yeah, well, it sure feels like you are. Poor kid of mine, having to grow up with a nagging, overbearing mom like you. You don't want a mom like that, do you? Jack sneered and directed his voice at my belly. I was furious. Don't act like a dad when you haven't done a single thing for this baby. I shot back. That hit a nerve. Well, I am the dad, aren't I? Unless you've got another one lined up. Jack spat before storming out of the house. This fight felt different, like something had broken beyond repair. I started to wonder if I could even stay with Jack anymore. And then it happened. Oh, it's happening, I muttered as the contractions hit me suddenly. At the most critical moment, Jack was nowhere to be found. I had to call a cab and go to the hospital alone. When I gave birth, Jack never showed up at the hospital. Maybe he was avoiding me after our fight, but no matter what had happened between us, it was appalling that he didn't even try to reach out when his child was born. Diane said she would drag Jack to the hospital if necessary and went to check on him at our house, but she found that Jack wasn't there. For a moment, we wondered if he had gone missing. I even considered contacting the police. When I called his company, I learned that although Jack was still technically employed, he had been taking frequent absences. He was missing work 2 or 3 days a week. This was shocking news to everyone. You said you were working overtime almost every night. Even his colleagues had no idea where he was. They assumed he was at home, which, of course, he wasn't. Where on earth had Jack been spending his time? After discussing with Diane and my parents, we decided to focus on my recovery and the baby for now. Whatever was going on with Jack, it would have to wait. I was discharged from the hospital, and 2 days later, Jack returned home. Not voluntarily, though. Diane called Jack's office and directly instructed him to return home immediately. "Where have you been?" Diane demanded sharply when Jack finally arrived. "At a motel," Jack muttered, avoiding eye contact and looking down. "Why didn't you come home? Your child has been born, for heaven's sake." I lost my confidence," he mumbled. Diane and I both exclaimed simultaneously. What? I think I have a mental illness. That's the first I've heard of it." "Really? Have you been to a doctor?" Diane asked, her voice skeptical. Jack shook his head. "No, I haven't been to a hospital. But I've never felt this unwilling to go to work before. So I must be sick." There's a lot to unpack here, but let's start with why. Why do you feel this way? The relationships at work. "They're not going well," Jack said with a heavy tone. "Why not?" I asked instinctively. "When I give orders, my subordinates don't listen. No one follows what I say." "What kind of orders are you giving?" Things like asking them to return my rented DVDs or to make me coffee. What? That's not work-related. Of course, they're not listening to that. But in their boss at work, it's common sense to follow your boss orders. Have you always been giving orders like that? Yay, I have, Jack said as if it were obvious. Diane and I exchanged a deep sigh. We were beyond exasperated. Work isn't going well. And at home, Naomi, the devil, criticizes everything I do. I can't take it anymore. My mental health is completely shot. I just can't handle work right now. His self-pity pushed me over the edge. Everything you're complaining about is your own fault. You're just making excuses for yourself. Go to work already. You weren't like this before. You used to be kind. They say women show their true colors after marriage, and it's true. You're acting like a child, so I have to talk to you like this. I'm not being childish. I just don't have the mental stamina to keep going to work anymore. Didn't you say once that you could get through anything with determination? Why don't you apply that logic now? I'm not like you, living an easy life as a housewife. You can't understand my suffering. No, I don't understand it, and I won't pretend to. But didn't you say you're the man of the house? And if you don't work, we can't make a living. Then just work. If you hate your job so much, change it. By the way, when did you start slacking off at work? What's going on with your paid leave? My paid leave is almost gone. Then your salary's going to drop too, isn't it? We won't be able to afford our expenses. Your job is to work, right? So work. Do you want me to grab you a job listings magazine? My sharp words made Jack burst into tears. This is cruel. Even when I say I'm struggling, you don't even try to be there for me. When I told you I was struggling, you told me to bring you a beer. Was that your way of being supportive? Jack fell silent, unable to counter my words. Diane chimed in. Everything we've heard so far makes you 100% at fault, Jack. Naomi is absolutely right. You exaggerate everything, and if I so much as point out something, you'd cry about it. You're weak. I've endured far more severe stress than you ever have. Your suffering doesn't even count as suffering. Jack, still crying, raised his voice defensively. I couldn't help but laugh. Take a look in the mirror. You're the one bawling your eyes out right now. I just pointed out a few things, and here you are, a complete mess. You're such a cold woman. Of course I am. How else am I supposed to act toward someone who wasn't even there for me during childbirth? How am I supposed to be kind to someone like that? But I'm your husband. And does it mean I should automatically be kind to you? Have you been unconditionally kind to me as your wife? You were kind in the past, sure, but lately, all you've been is cold. If anyone's changed since we got married, it's you. You've never worked outside. You can possibly understand my struggles. That's true. Just like I foolishly thought a man could understand what it's like to be pregnant. I was wrong. I guess I was misled by my friends' husbands, who were understanding and supportive. But you've proven that your personality is garbage. No, wait, that's an insult to garbage. You're worse. Jack, clearly upset, kept repeating, "Don't blame me," as tears streamed down his face. Diane, visibly fed up, looked at Jack with utter disbelief. Meanwhile, Jack sobbed even harder, saying, "It's not my fault," like a child throwing a tantrum. Realizing it was pointless to continue, Diane and I decided to leave Jack, who was now crying harder than baby Lily, and retreat to the bedroom for the night. The next morning, to my surprise, Jack apologized. "I'm sorry," he said. "What do you mean by that? I've realized something. I can't live without you. Excuse me, can't you see? I'm emotionally broken. am in no state to work. I need you to support me. From now on, I'll be a house husband. You're really talented to say something so ridiculous while wide awake. Don't brush me off. I'm serious. I wish you were joking. But what are you even saying? They'll take care of everything at home. You can go to work without worrying. Can you produce breast milk? What? Do you think taking care of the house is the only thing that needs to be done? Your job is the housework, right? Who's going to take care of the baby? You, of course. There aren't many companies willing to hire someone with a baby in tow. What exactly are you thinking? Realistically, I can't work under these conditions. Then I'll take care of the baby too. Let me ask again. Can you produce breast milk? There are things only women can do, you know. And there's no way I'd trust someone like you with Lily. Then what are we supposed to do? Who's going to work? We won't be able to survive. The only person whose life will become unsustainable is yours, so it's fine. What? What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The only one who'll be in trouble if you don't work is you. That's obvious. What about you? Don't tell me you're planning to keep all your earnings to yourself. Don't joke around. I've been supporting you all this time. I can't believe you'd even think of that. No, I'm not saying that. Then what are you saying? Jack's question was met with a brief silence from me. Diane, who had been quietly listening to our back and forth, seemed to have realized something. She muttered, "Well, it can't be helped." Seeing this, Jack tilted his head in confusion. "What's going on? Let's get a divorce." "What?" Jack was stunned by my proposal. As he noticed the unwavering determination on my face, his face grew pale. "Why, we just had a baby. There are plenty of reasons. And we've had countless arguments already. It's a little late to ask why, don't you think? But this isn't something worth divorcing over." True. From one perspective, you don't hit me or threaten my life, so maybe this isn't something worth divorcing over. But I'm tired. I'm tired too. There it is. You always say things like, "I have it worse," or "I struggle more." Struggles aren't something you can compare. If someone feels pain, then it's painful for them. It's not for you to judge. You've done the same thing to me, though. That's because I wanted you to understand how I felt. But look at where that got us. All you ever do is insist you're the victim, without even trying to consider how I feel. I thought you couldn't understand me unless I shared my feelings. That's just forcing your emotions onto me. And when I did the same, you brushed it off as exaggeration. That's unfair. I didn't mean to. Maybe you didn't mean to. But that's the result. I've been hurt. And my feelings for you are gone. I can't stay in this marriage anymore. Please reconsider. There's no need to divorce right now. If I don't divorce you now, you'll just keep relying on me more and more. I'm not going to silently take care of the baby, handle the housework, and work a job all at the same time. Can you really raise the child on your own? I've practically been raising her alone this entire time. I'm prepared. It's not going to be easy. So, you think having you around would make raising her any easier? It'd just be like having 2 children in the house instead of 1. When Jack continued to press, Diane told him, "Give it up." Jack finally understood that pleading with me was pointless and slumped down at Diane's words. "How am I supposed to live from now on?" He groaned. "Well, maybe you should start by changing your mindset. Even if you switch jobs, if you keep thinking the way you do, you'll just repeat the same mistakes." At my words, Jack collapsed and started crying. I briefly wondered if I might have gone too far with the emotional weight, especially since it all seemed to be Jack's own doing. But honestly, he deserved some tough love. Even though we were getting divorced, I hoped Jack as Lily's dad would eventually change for the better. Jack didn't give up easily. He repeatedly tried to persuade me with, "How about we try again?" But eventually, we managed to divorce. I was worried about whether Jack, who had been frequently absent from work, would be able to pay child support properly, but Diane reassured me that she would help out with that. She promised that our lives would be financially stable. Diane remained concerned about me getting divorced with young Lily in tow. Even after the divorce, I still saw Diane as a wonderful person, and I occasionally had her meet with Lily as per my request. At first, Diane was hesitant, saying, "It's not great for a divorced family to see the child," but it seemed like the emotional barriers were slowly coming down, and I was glad to see that. As for Jack, he initially seemed to try and change his mindset at his current company, but it seemed he had become so disliked by his subordinates and colleagues that the situation didn't improve as expected. Jack, who had claimed to have mental health issues, ended up going to therapy, and it seemed that he had a difficult time, both emotionally and physically. His health deteriorated, and he struggled to work properly, which left him without the energy to look for a new job. For about 2 to 3 years, he alternated between taking leave and returning to work. Eventually, due to the excessive amount of time he took off, his company moved him to a different department, where he started managing the warehouse. His condition worsened even further after that. Being demoted from the sales department was a huge blow to Jack, it seemed. He ended up resigning, started looking for a new job, but struggled to find something suitable. After about a year, he worked part-time at a factory and eventually became a full-time employee there. You might think Jack was really good at his job to move from part-time to full-time, but that's not exactly the case. It wasn't that he couldn't do the job, but it was more that the factory had such a high turnover rate due to the harsh working conditions. The factory was always understaffed, so they increased the number of full-time employees, gave them titles, and even manipulated overtime pay. The shifts were also irregular, and many employees didn't follow the schedules, so the lower-level workers were often forced to work long hours, taking orders from their superiors. Despite using borderline legal methods for managing employees, the factory was still advertised as a great place to work on job listing sites. It seemed like Jack wanted to quit, but he couldn't, because he was worried he wouldn't be able to find another job. However, the good news was that the negative habit of treating subordinates like servants seemed to have disappeared after working in such a tough environment, having been in a position where he himself had to take orders from his superiors. He finally understood the struggles of those below him. Well, I hope he works hard for Lily's child support. In a way, I'm cheering him on. Just a little bit. But honestly, a slightly harsh environment seems like the perfect place for him to change his thinking. In the end, I think this job might actually be a good fit for Jack, depending on how you look at it. On the other hand, for me, it was my first childbirth, my first divorce, and my first time raising a child. It was undoubtedly busy, and to say I didn't struggle would be a lie. Maybe it would have been better to stay with Jack. There were, of course, moments when I wondered such, but with the support of my parents, and above all, the joy of watching Lily grow visibly before my eyes, I found it fun and endearing. While I may not be able to call myself a perfect mom, I think I managed to handle motherhood well despite everything. I'm still not sure if I'm raising her the right way, though. However, when Lily started elementary school, a small incident occurred. There was a child in her class who was a bit developmentally delayed, and that child was being ostracized by the others. When Lily saw the bullying, she was furious. A minor scuffle broke out, and we had to apologize to the other family. But in the end, the bullying in the class stopped, and the issue was resolved. Of course, starting a fight wasn't a good thing, so I made sure to scold her for that, but at that moment, I couldn't help but feel proud of Lily. Since she was young, I had always taught her, if you see someone in need, help them. And to see that she had grown into a strong child who could actually put that lesson into practice made me proud. Now, as she's preparing for exams, Lily has been helping me with my diet, guiding me on exercise and meal improvements. I hope that, moving forward, Lily and I can continue to build a home filled with laughter,